Hello and welcome to another journey through history at night. I'm so glad you've chosen to spend this time here in this quiet space we've created together. Tonight, we're going to travel very far back in time and very far across the world to an island in the Mediterranean Sea where the first great civilization of Europe was born. Before we begin our voyage, I invite you to settle deeply into wherever you are resting tonight. Adjust your pillows, pull your blankets close, and let your body sink into complete comfort. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose and release it gently through your mouth. And again, breathing in peace, breathing out the day's tensions. One more time, feeling your shoulders drop, your jaw relax, your entire being preparing for rest. Tonight's story is about the Minoans, a people who lived on the island of Crete nearly 4,000 years ago. Theirs was a world of painted palaces and ocean-going ships, of graceful dancers and mysterious symbols, of power and beauty that would eventually crumble and fade into legend. But for 1,000 years, they created something remarkable, a civilization so advanced, so refined, that when archaeologists first uncovered their ruins, they could scarcely believe what they had found. As I tell you this story, please know that you don't need to hear every word. You don't need to remember facts or dates. This is not a test or a lesson. This is simply a gentle tale told in a quiet voice, designed to accompany you as you drift towards sleep. If you find yourself slipping away into dreams before the story ends, that is exactly as it should be. The Minoans will be here, waiting in these words, whenever you wish to return to them. So let us begin. Close your eyes now, if you haven't already, and let me paint for you a picture of an island in the sea. Imagine that you are standing on a shore, looking out across waters that shimmer in shades of deepest blue and turquoise. The sun is warm on your face, but not harsh. A gentle breeze carries the scent of wild herbs, thyme and rosemary growing on the hillsides behind you. The sound of waves is soft, rhythmic, eternal. This is Crete, the largest of the Greek islands, a place of mountains and fertile valleys, of hidden caves and protective harbors. And somewhere on this island, in a time before written history as we know it, before the great classical civilizations of Athens and Rome, before even the Trojan War of legend, a people were building palaces that would become the stuff of myth. Let us walk together now across these ancient shores and discover the secrets of the Minoans. Chapter 1: The Island Awakens. Our story begins not with the Minoans themselves, but with the land that would shape them. Crete rises from the Mediterranean like a long, mountainous spine, stretching from east to west for nearly 200 miles. If you were to fly above it like a bird, you would see a landscape of dramatic contrasts. White-capped mountains in the center, their peaks sometimes touched with snow even in spring, descending to rolling hills covered in olive groves and vineyards, finally giving way to narrow coastal plains and sheltered bays. The island is blessed with a climate that the ancient Greeks themselves considered nearly perfect. Winters are mild and rainy, bringing life to the soil. Summers are long, hot, and dry, ripening grapes and olives and grain. The mountains capture clouds and create freshwater springs. The sea provides fish in abundance. It is a place where nature seems to conspire to support human life. But Crete is also a place of hidden dangers. The island sits atop a geological fault line, where the African tectonic plate slides beneath the European plate. This makes Crete an island that trembles. Earthquakes have shaken these shores for millennia, sometimes with catastrophic force. And not far to the north lies the volcanic island of Santorini, which would one day erupt, with such violence that it would send tsunamis crashing against Crete's northern shore. In the darkness of your rest tonight, imagine yourself standing in a small Stone Age settlement on Crete, perhaps 7,000 years ago. You are surrounded by simple mud brick houses with thatched roofs. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Children play near doorways while their parents tend small gardens of barley and lentils. A few goats bleat in their pens. The community is tiny, perhaps no more than a few dozen souls, scratching a living from the soil and the sea. Life here is hard but sustainable. The people have learned to cultivate crops and domesticate animals. They make simple pottery, fired in open pits. They weave cloth from flax and wool. They are not so different from countless other Neolithic communities scattered across the Mediterranean world and beyond. Centuries pass, generations are born, live, and die. The seasons turn in their endless cycle, and slowly, gradually, something begins to change. New ideas arrive with travelers from distant shores. Perhaps traders from Anatolia bring new types of grain. Perhaps sailors from the Levant share knowledge of metalworking. Perhaps settlers from the mainland bring new techniques for building or new stories about their gods. By around 3000 BCE, the people of Crete have learned to work bronze, that transformative alloy of copper and tin that gives its name to an entire age of human history. Bronze tools are harder and more durable than stone. Bronze weapons are more effective in war. Bronze allows for more sophisticated craftsmanship, more complex buildings, more elaborate art. And as bronze spreads across Crete, the settlements begin to grow. Villages become towns. Some towns become centers of trade and craft production. Pottery becomes more refined, decorated with intricate geometric patterns. The dead are buried with greater ceremony, suggesting the emergence of social hierarchies. Some people are becoming wealthier and more powerful than others. The stage is set. The island is awakening. And within a few more centuries, something truly remarkable will emerge from these Bronze Age communities, the palaces. Let yourself drift now, feeling the weight of thousands of years pressing gently down, compressing time like layers of sediment. You are safe and warm in your bed, but your mind can wander freely through these ancient epochs, watching as Crete slowly transforms from a scattered collection of farming villages into something far more sophisticated. Chapter 2: The First Palaces Rise. Around 1900 BCE, something extraordinary happened on Crete. In several locations across the island, at Knossos, Phaistos, Malia, and Zakros, large, complex buildings began to rise. These were not simple houses or fortified castles. They were palaces, administrative centers, religious sanctuaries, and economic hubs, all combined into single vast structures. The palace at Knossos, which would eventually become the largest and most famous, was built on a low hill just south of Crete's northern coast. Picture yourself approaching it for the first time, as a traveler might have done nearly 4,000 years ago. You have sailed across the sea and landed in the harbor. You've made your way inland, walking along a well-maintained road paved with stones. As you crest a final rise, the palace comes into view and you stop, breathless with wonder. It is enormous, spreading across more than 20,000 square meters. The walls are made of massive stone blocks, fitted together with remarkable precision. But these walls are not crude or fortress-like. They are covered in smooth plaster, painted in rich colors, deep reds, vibrant yellows, and a blue so pure it seems to capture the very essence of the Mediterranean sky. The palace is not a single building, but a complex of connected structures arranged around a large central courtyard. This courtyard is rectangular, oriented precisely north to south, its surface paved with flagstones. It serves as the heart of the entire complex, a gathering place for ceremonies and markets and festivals. From the central court, you can see doorways and corridors leading off in every direction, creating a maze-like quality that will later inspire legends of labyrinths and monsters. There are so many rooms, storerooms filled with massive clay jars called pith, each large enough to hold a person and filled with grain or oil or wine. Workshops where artisans craft pottery and jewelry and textiles. Residential quarters with elegant frescoes on the walls. Religious shrines containing sacred symbols. Administrative offices where scribes keep careful records on clay tablets. The palace is not just large, it is sophisticated in ways that would not be seen again in Europe for more than 1,000 years. There is a complex drainage system with terracotta pipes that carry water and waste. There are light wells, vertical shafts that allow sunlight and fresh air to penetrate deep into the interior rooms. There are multiple stories connected by staircases of carved stone or painted wood. And everywhere there is beauty. The walls are adorned with frescoes showing scenes of nature and ritual, dolphins leaping through waves, lilies nodding in gardens, young people performing acrobatic leaps over the backs of bulls, priestesses in elaborate flounced skirts raising their arms in gestures of worship. These paintings are not crude or primitive. They are elegant, sophisticated, filled with movement and life. The people who built this palace, and others like it across Crete, were not isolated barbarians on the edge of the civilized world. They were part of a vast trading network that stretched across the eastern Mediterranean. Minoan pottery has been found in Egypt and the Levant and Cyprus and the Greek mainland. Egyptian scarabs and Anatolian metalwork have been found in Crete. The Minoans were sailors and merchants, exchanging goods and ideas with all the great civilizations of the Bronze Age. As you lie in your bed tonight, imagine yourself walking through the cool corridors of Knossos on a warm afternoon. The stone beneath your feet is smooth and slightly cool. Shafts of sunlight pierce down through the light wells, creating patterns of gold on the painted plaster. You can hear voices echoing distantly, the murmur of people conducting business, the sound of a flute or lyre being played somewhere in the depths of the palace. The air smells of olive oil and incense, and the flowers in the gardens. Who were these people who built such beautiful places? What did they believe? How did they organize their society? Let your breathing slow and deepen as we explore these questions gently, without urgency. Chapter 3: A Society of Abundance. The Minoans lived in a world of relative abundance. Crete's climate and soil were generous, producing grain and grapes and olives in quantities sufficient not just for survival, but for trade. The sea around the island teemed with fish and shellfish. The Minoans kept sheep and goats for wool and milk, cattle for meat and hides, and pigs for their rich fat. But beyond mere sustenance, the Minoans developed a sophisticated economy based on specialization and trade. Not everyone was a farmer. Some people were professional potters, creating vessels of extraordinary beauty and refinement. Minoan pottery from this period, often decorated with flowing designs of marine life or plants, is considered among the finest ever produced in the ancient world. Other people were weavers, working at looms to produce textiles from wool and flax. Cloth was one of the most valuable commodities in the Bronze Age, and the Minoans became famous for their fine fabrics. We know from later Greek legends that Cretan textiles were prized throughout the Mediterranean. There were metalworkers who cast bronze tools and weapons and intricate jewelry. There were stonemasons who carved seals, small engraved stones used to mark ownership or authority, each one a miniature work of art. There were perfumers who distilled scented oils from flowers and herbs. There were shipbuilders who constructed the vessels that would carry Minoan goods across the wine-dark sea. All of this economic activity was coordinated, at least in part, through the palaces. The great storerooms at Knossos and the other palace sites could hold enormous quantities of goods, thousands of liters of olive oil, tons of grain, countless jars of wine. These were not private hoards, but central reserves, managed by administrators who kept careful records. And we know they kept records because they left them behind, inscribed on clay tablets in two scripts that modern scholars call Linear A and Linear B. Linear B was eventually deciphered in the 1950s and turned out to be an early form of Greek. But Linear A, the older script used by the Minoans themselves, remains undeciphered to this day. We can see the symbols, neat rows of signs pressed into clay, but we cannot yet fully read what they say. What we can tell from these tablets is that the palace administrators were tracking everything: inventories of goods, allocations of rations to workers, records of religious offerings, lists of personnel. The Minoan palaces were not just religious centers or royal residences. They were the economic engines of a complex redistributive economy. Imagine yourself now as a farmer on Crete in the Bronze Age. You work a plot of land on the fertile Messara plain, not far from the palace of Phaistos. Every year, when the harvest comes, you gather your grain and place a portion of it in large baskets. You load these baskets onto the back of a donkey and walk with your neighbors to the palace. At the palace, you are met by a scribe, a professional administrator who sits cross-legged with a wooden board and a lump of fresh clay. He asks you your name, and with a pointed stylus, he presses symbols into the clay, recording your delivery, in return for your grain. You might receive a ration of olive oil or wool, or perhaps credit towards some future need. The palace serves as a kind of bank, a warehouse, a tax collector, and a redistributive center all at once. It smooths out the inequalities of nature. A bad harvest in one region can be offset by surpluses from another. It allows for specialization. You can focus on growing grain because you know you can obtain oil and wine and cloth through the palace system. This is not yet the coinage-based market economy of later civilizations, but it is sophisticated and effective. It is an economy of abundance managed through centralized authority, and that abundance is visible everywhere in Minoan art. Let yourself relax even more deeply now, feeling the comfort of your bed supporting you completely. Your breathing is slow and steady, as natural and effortless as waves upon a shore. As you rest, picture in your mind the vibrant frescoes that once adorned the palace walls. Great blue monkeys gathering crocuses, their fur painted in shades of cerulean and indigo. Processional scenes showing young people carrying vessels of offering, their clothing bright with patterns. Gardens full of red lilies and white crocuses, painted with such care that you can almost smell their perfume. This was a civilization that celebrated beauty, that had the leisure and resources to create art for its own sake. And at the center of much of their religious and cultural life was a figure of enormous power, the goddess. Chapter 4, The goddess and the sacred bull. If you could visit a Minoan household, you might find, in a small shrine or niche, a figurine of a goddess. She stands with her arms raised high, or perhaps she holds snakes in her outstretched hands. She wears the characteristic Minoan dress, a long, flounced skirt and a tight bodice that leaves her breasts bare, a style that shocked the Victorian archaeologists who first discovered these images, but which was clearly the height of fashion and religious propriety for the Minoans themselves. The Minoans appear to have worshipped a powerful female deity, perhaps a mother goddess, associated with fertility, nature, and the cycles of life and death. She is often shown with animals, snakes, birds, lions, suggesting her dominion over the natural world. Some scholars believe she may have been a singular goddess with many aspects, while others think there may have been multiple goddesses, each with her own sphere of influence. Religious ritual in Minoan Crete was not confined to dark, enclosed temples. Much of it seems to have taken place in natural settings, in caves deep in the mountains where offerings of pottery and bronze figurines were left, on mountain peaks where small shrines were built to catch the first rays of dawn, in groves of sacred trees. The Minoans seem to have seen the divine presence in the landscape itself. But they also conducted elaborate rituals within the palaces, particularly in the great central courtyard. And central to many of these rituals was an animal that appears again and again in Minoan art, the bull. The bull was clearly a creature of profound religious significance. Bulls are depicted in frescoes and on seal stones, often shown in moments of dynamic action. And one of the most famous images from Minoan Crete shows a ritual that seems almost impossible: bull leaping. Picture this scene, painted on a wall at Knossos, and so carefully restored that you can see it clearly even now, thousands of years later. A massive bull, its muscles taut, charges across the frame. A young person's slender, athletic skin painted red to indicate male, or perhaps left white for female, grasps the bull's horns. As the bull tosses its head, the acrobat is flung upward and backward, performing a somersault over the animal's back. Behind the bull, another figure stands ready to catch the leaper as they land. Was this ritual real or symbolic? Did young people actually vault over charging bulls, risking goring and death in a sacred display of courage? Or is this image a metaphorical representation of something else? The domination of nature, the transition from youth to adulthood, the dance between danger and grace. We cannot know for certain, but the image persists, haunting and beautiful, and it may have given birth to one of the most enduring legends of the ancient world. As you rest tonight, let your mind drift to the story of Theseus and the Minotaur, that tale told by the ancient Greeks long after the Minoan civilization had fallen. In the legend, King Minos of Crete demands tribute from Athens. 7 young men and 7 young women sent every year to be devoured by the Minotaur, a monster that is half man and half bull, trapped within an impossible labyrinth beneath the palace. Could this legend be a distorted memory of real Minoan practices? Perhaps tribute was indeed sent to Crete by mainland powers, and perhaps young people did come to participate in dangerous bull-leaping rituals. The labyrinth might be a memory of the maze-like palace itself, with its hundreds of interconnected rooms. And the Minotaur, that hybrid creature, might represent the bull-headed masks worn by priests, or simply the sacred bull itself. The Greeks who told this story lived more than 1,000 years after the height of Minoan civilization. By their time, the great palaces were ruins, already ancient and mysterious. The Greeks did not understand the people who had built them, did not know their language or their true history, and so they created myths to explain the strange, beautiful, crumbling remains they found. Let yourself sink deeper now into rest. Feel the weight of mythology and history pressing gently on your consciousness, not as facts to be learned, but as stories to drift among, like a boat floating on a calm sea. Chapter 5: Masters of the Wine-Dark Sea. The Minoans were, above all else, a maritime people. Their civilization was built on the sea, sustained by the sea, and ultimately vulnerable to the sea's capricious power. Crete's position in the Mediterranean made it a natural crossroads for trade routes connecting Egypt to the south, the Levant to the east, Anatolia to the northeast, and the Greek mainland to the north and west. Minoan ships were elegant vessels, built with a grace that matched the art and architecture of the palaces. We know what they looked like from paintings and models found in Grave. They were long and narrow, with high curved prows and sterns often decorated with painted eyes or the heads of animals. They had a single square sail to catch the wind, but also banks of oars for when the breeze failed or for maneuvering in harbors. These ships were not built for war. Unlike later Greek and Roman warships, Minoan vessels do not appear to have rams or reinforced hulls designed for attacking other boats. They were traders and carriers designed to hold cargo and passengers, to cross open water and dock safely in distant ports. Imagine yourself aboard such a ship on a summer voyage from Knossos to Egypt. You have loaded the hold with fine pottery, decorated with octopuses and dolphins, with storage jars of olive oil, sealed with clay and wax, with textiles woven in intricate patterns, with metalwork and jewelry and perfumed oils. These are the luxuries of the Minoan world, and they will fetch high prices in the markets of the Nile Delta. The crew casts off the mooring lines. The sail is raised, catching the wind that blows steadily from the northwest during summer months. The ship glides out of the harbor, past the headlands, and into the open sea. The water is a deep, dark blue, the color of wine, as Homer would later describe it. The Mediterranean is relatively calm during the sailing season, but it is never entirely safe. Storms can appear suddenly. Pirates might lurk near rocky shores. And the sea itself is vast and disorienting, with few landmarks visible once land falls behind. But the Minoan sailors are expert navigators. They read the stars at night and the sun's position by day. They know the patterns of winds and currents. They recognize seabirds and marine creatures that indicate proximity to land. They have sailed these routes many times, and they carry in their minds a mental map of the Mediterranean, a network of islands and ports and hazards. After several days of sailing, the coast of Egypt appears on the horizon. The ship makes for the port of Avaris in the Nile Delta, a cosmopolitan city where Minoans are known and welcomed. You unload your cargo and marvel at the exotic goods available here: Egyptian gold and ivory, ostrich feathers and ebony wood, linen so fine it seems almost transparent. You conduct your business through interpreters, gesturing and pointing, perhaps using a few words of Egyptian you've picked up on previous voyages. And then, holds filled with new treasures, you begin the return journey to Crete. The round trip might take weeks, depending on winds and weather. But when you finally sight the mountains of Crete rising from the sea, you feel a surge of relief and joy. Home, safety, the familiar shores of your island. The Minoans did not just trade. They established colonies or outposts on other islands. On Santorini, then called Thera, There was a settlement with buildings decorated in Minoan style, though whether it was a true colony or an independent community heavily influenced by Crete is still debated. Similar Minoan influences have been found on other Aegean islands, Cythera, Milos, Rhodes. For a time, it seems, the Minoans had what scholars call a thalassocracy, a sea empire. They did not conquer and occupy vast territories like later empires would. Instead, they dominated through trade, through cultural influence, through the prestige of their goods and the skill of their sailors. Let your breathing deepen now, slow and rhythmic as the stroke of oars through calm water. Feel yourself rocking gently as if cradled in the hull of a ship. The water is peaceful. The sky above is scattered with stars. You are safe, floating, drifting towards sleep as the waves whisper their eternal song. Chapter 6: Daily Life in the Palace. Let us descend now from the grand scale of empires and trade routes to something more intimate, the daily life of people within the palace walls. What was it like to live and work in a place like Knossos during the height of Minoan civilization? The palace would have awakened with the dawn. Crete's sun rises early, painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold. The first people to stir might be the servants and slaves who tend the fires and prepare the morning meals. Smoke begins to rise from cooking areas as barley porridge is made in large vessels, perhaps sweetened with honey or dates, sometimes mixed with cheese or herbs. As the light strengthens, the palace comes fully to life. Administrators arrive at their offices, where they will spend the day managing the complex economic affairs of the state. Scribes settle cross-legged on the floor or on low stools, clay tablets and styluses at hand, ready to record the day's transactions and inventories. In the workshops, craftspeople begin their specialized labor. A potter sits at her wheel, a horizontal disc that spins when pushed. She places a lump of clay at the center and, with hands made skilled by years of practice, begins to shape a vessel. Her fingers move with such confidence, applying pressure here, smoothing there, pulling the walls up tall and thin. As the pot takes form, she can already see in her mind how it will look when painted, perhaps a bold geometric pattern or a flowing design of seaweed and shells, capturing the essence of the sea that surrounds and sustains her island. Nearby, weavers work at vertical looms. The repetitive motion of passing the shuttle back and forth, creates a meditative rhythm. They are making cloth for the elite fine fabric that will be dyed with precious colors, purple from the murex shellfish, red from madder root, blue from woad or indigo. Some of this cloth will be worn in the palace. Some will be packed carefully and sent abroad as trade goods. In the residential quarters, which are notably comfortable and well-appointed, the elite of Minoan society go about their daily routines. Archaeological evidence suggests that men and women in Minoan society had relatively equal status, at least among the upper classes. Women appear in frescoes as priestesses, as spectators at important events, as participants in religious rituals. They are not hidden away or relegated to purely domestic roles. Perhaps a high-ranking woman, let's imagine her as a priestess, prepares for the day's religious duties. She bathes in a terracotta tub, the water scented with herbs. She dresses in the elaborate costume of her office, the long, flounced skirt made of multiple layers of fabric, each tier edged with decorative trim, the tight bodice that emphasizes her role as a representative of the goddess, jewelry of gold and precious stones, including large earrings and multiple necklaces, And finally, her hair, elaborately arranged in long curls that cascade down her back. Once dressed, she makes her way through the corridors to one of the palace's many shrines. Here, in a small room decorated with sacred symbols, the double axe, the sacred horns, the pillar, she performs a morning ritual. She places offerings before the image of the goddess, a perfect red lily, a small vessel of olive oil, a handful of grain. She raises her arms in the characteristic gesture of Minoan prayer, hands uplifted, palms open to receive divine blessing. As the day progresses, the central courtyard fills with activity. This was not a quiet, formal space, but a bustling center of communal life. Merchants might spread out their wares here, displaying goods brought from distant lands. Officials might conduct public business, resolving disputes or making announcements. And on special days, the courtyard would be prepared for ritual performances. Perhaps the famous bull leaping, perhaps processional dances, perhaps dramatic reenactments of mythological stories. By evening, as the sun descends toward the western sea, the pace of activity slows. Meals are prepared in communal areas. The Minoan diet was healthy and varied. Bread made from wheat or barley, olives and olive oil, cheese from sheep and goats, fish and shellfish, seasonal vegetables like broad beans and chickpeas, fruits including figs and grapes, wine mixed with water according to the custom of the time, and occasionally meat from sheep, goats, pigs, or cattle, though this was probably reserved for feasts and religious occasions. After the evening meal, people might gather for entertainment. Musicians play the lyre, a stringed instrument whose music we can imagine but never truly hear. Singers perform songs that have been passed down through generations, songs of heroes and gods, of the sea and the harvest, of love and loss. And as darkness falls completely, lamps are lit, simple clay vessels filled with olive oil, a floating wick providing a soft, warm glow. Eventually, people retire to their quarters. The palace grows quiet. Only the night guards remain alert, watching from the parapets, ensuring the safety of all within. And in the deep silence of the Cretan night, under stars that burn with ancient light, the palace rests. Let yourself rest now as well, imagining that you are in a comfortable room within the palace. A small lamp flickers nearby, its light dancing on the painted walls. Through an open window, you can hear the distant sound of the sea, that eternal rhythm that has lulled countless generations to sleep. Your bed is simple but comfortable, the blankets woven from soft wool. And as your eyes grow heavy, you know you are safe, protected, surrounded by beauty. Let sleep come naturally now. Chapter 7: The Time of Troubles. All golden ages must end, though the ending rarely comes as expected. Sweet dreams.